An area which causes major problems for dealers is the VAT treatment of finance transactions. Now, this is a huge area to deal with, so I'm going to split the subject over two text blogs. This month, I'm going to look at bumping and online finance transactions, and then next month, I'm going to have a look at partial exemption and the capital goods scheme. I'm classing this as a red issue, which means there's a high likelihood of a liability arising and also of it being detected by HMRC. And unfortunately, the amount of the liability can be really high as well. Also, it's very difficult for you actually to correct the error once it's taken place, so big problems all round. Now, in relation to sales to finance houses, what do I mean by bumping? The key question is, when you look at your DMS invoice, does the gross and the VAT amount agree to what's on the finance documents? If the cash price of the goods on the finance documents is higher than that, HMRC's position is that you've actually sold the vehicle for that higher amount. You then work out the difference between the finance documents and your DMS invoice, calculate what the VAT content is, and then raise an assessment as this is effectively extra output VAT that you should have accounted for according to HMRC. This difference usually arises due to negative equity on the part exchange vehicle. So many finance houses won't actually refinance negative equity. So some bright spark has the idea of playing around with values without the finance house knowing, just to make sure that the transaction actually goes through. With online finance systems, what I also see are some transactions where, although the gross amount agrees, the VAT doesn't. Now, with these ones, it tends to just be an inputting error rather than anything that's been done deliberately. However, if the VAT is higher on that online system, again, HMRC are going to raise an assessment on you. Now, assuming you don't want bumping to take place, what should you be doing? Firstly, I think you should have a written policy which states that value manipulation isn't allowed, so that all the values must agree on all of your paperwork. You also need to make sure that your staff fully understand the systems that the finance house is asking you to use. So, for example, some finance houses have a system where there's a shortfall box and you can put any negative equity in there to separately disclose it, which would then help your situation with HMRC. I think you should have a sign-off procedure for deal files, so somebody's actually checking the paperwork and making sure that all of the values agree. Use your DMS. So if you've got a carriage-based system, reports NV2 and UV4 can be run, and they'll highlight transactions where it looks like there's some negative equity. You can then check the deal files and make sure that there's a valid reason for any difference in values. If you can't run those reports, then unfortunately you're just going to have to sample check. I can't emphasise enough what a complicated and potentially costly area bumping can be to a dealer. So if you need any advice on this subject, then please get in touch with me. So that's bumping. Next month, I'm going to have a look at the partial exemption and capital goods scheme implications of finance transactions.